Alexander Sharp joining me to discuss why he feels that voters need to vote yes on Prop 205.
There are several reasons, and they all speak to matters of faith. The first is simply justice. Our marijuana laws, and indeed the whole failed war on drugs, comes down so heavily on minority groups, and
Right.
that's a disproportionate impact in a way that ruins lives generally, but especially ruins lives of poor people.
Right.
So that's the first reason. Second is what I boil down to simple honesty. We've got a hodgepodge of drug laws. Some drugs are legal, like alcohol.
Right.
Marijuana is illegal. Uh, Vicodin and Oxycontin,
Prescription
painkillers,
drugs.
prescription drugs are legal. Marijuana is not. Kids sniff out hypocrisy. They know what's going on if we're not talking to them straight. So how can we be in any way moral leaders if we're not even honest about the way we're categorizing drugs and how we ourselves, often people that use alcohol, are using drugs. So simple honesty is a basis for good educational programs so that we can tell people what drugs are all about. You can't do that if you're not even putting drugs on a honest playing field. The third thing is deeply for me a matter of faith, and that is that the Jesus that I know didn't go out and say, let's arrest people for personal behavior that didn't hurt others. He reached out to the heart. He reached out through persuasion and a sense of mercy and compassion and forgiveness. The marijuana laws, and again the drug war more broadly, and don't ever forget the fact that our marijuana laws fuel the failed war on drugs, hurt people's lives because they punish people. The motto of my organization is healing, not punishment, and that's what our faith calls upon us to do. The last thing is simply a matter of safety, especially for our youth. This is an argument that's been used so many times. I hope people are listening to it. You get your drugs in back alleys. You're getting them from people that are going to try to steer you to harder drugs, and you're getting stuff that you don't even know the quality of. It's often contaminated. So with taxing and regulate, you'll have stuff out there. You got to be very cautious about how you use it. You don't want our young people using it, but at least you've got something that's regulated. I don't like the term legalization. I like tax and regulate because it means you've got a handle on what our drugs are about, not just sort of in another world where it's prohibited, but they have them and everybody knows they're getting them.
Right.
This is honesty and clarity and control.
So are you of the belief that if people want it, they're going to find a way to get it,
Oh,
whether
absolutely.
it's
I
available
mean, that's a
legally or not?
platitude about this. I mean, the numbers are 80% of 12th graders can get marijuana in a matter of seconds.
Wow. Wow. And so just for the viewers who may not know, you're the executive director for the Clergy for a New Drug Policy.
That's
Tell
correct.
me about this organization, because I think most people would assume that people who are deeply in tune with religion, religious figures, would want to vote against anything drug related.
You know, that's because the extreme religious right, and I don't know if extreme is the right word for Franklin Graham, but certainly evangelicals, and there's many of the things we can respect and have in common, but evangelicals have come out against this on what I think is based on an outdated notion of sin, which says that you're going to be punished if you don't walk the straight and narrow in this world, and they equate that with not using drugs and not doing any other things that might be seen quite as sinful in order to get into the next world of salvation. That's
Right.
how they read a first century interpretation of the Bible. We live in the 21st century now, but the fact that evangelical Christians create a sense of what Christianity is leads to many people do exactly what you asked. There's a sense of Christianity that doesn't necessarily agree that all drug use is sinful and that the best way to deal with drug use is to punish and prohibit it.
Right. And just because it is regulated doesn't mean that you have to actually use it.
Absolutely. One of the mantras of there are law enforcement people that are supporting Prop 205. There is a national physicians group that is supporting it, and of course clergy are. So we put on forums called Cops, Docs, and Clergy against the drug war and speaking with one voice. And their mantra is you don't have to approve of marijuana use in order to support Proposition 205.
Now, how did your group get together? How was this formed?
I started with the notion that people in our society need a second chance. they don't get it. If you've got anything on your record, you're not going to be able to get back on
A
your feet.
job, an apartment,
So
anything.
this lets you believe in progress. I went down to Springfield, our state capital, began to try to help some of those folks, and I realized so many people were in prison who shouldn't be there because of low-level drug possession. You couldn't even talk to legislators about that 10 years ago. Now they have a commission in Illinois to reduce prison population by 25% in the next 10 years, meaning the language has changed. But I got into it to give people a second chance and realized our drug laws put people in that situation who should be nowhere near that level of problem in their lives.
So for viewers out there that are people of faith that are morally conflicted
Yes.
regarding Prop 205 and their own beliefs, what do you want to say to them?
I want to say that their concerns are real. This is a complex question, but that regulation and education is the way to resolve that anguish that people have, because that's going to lead to the better result. Regulation, control, and then persuasive educational programs. And I do want to add that 80% of the money that will be generated through Prop 205 will go to education programs, and that's a very important thing. There's a false ad, I think, on television right now that says, one mayor in Colorado says, well, we didn't get any of that money. $169 million has been generated through tax revenue in Colorado, a major portion of which has gone to education. So I don't know what happened to Denver, but other places are getting it.
So would you say that Colorado is a perfect example of the success of regulating marijuana?
I think it's premature to say that. I don't like people who cherry pick data. I will say that Governor Hickenlooper, who opposed this at the time, says, things seem to be working out. It's not, the fears that I was worried about haven't come true. Use of marijuana by youth is down, and the revenue has materialized. So there are very good signs coming out of Colorado. I think we have to wait longer, but the signs are good.
And one of the main reasons your organization addresses this issue is because there are so many people that are in prison for minor offenses related to marijuana.
That's how we got started. That's how we got started.
And that's a whole nother discussion.
That's
the
a whole
problem with our
I mean, in
system.
marijuana, most people don't go to prison. But even an arrest on your record can really mess up your life. Here's what the drug warriors don't get. They don't realize the damage they're doing to people in the name of trying to do the right thing. There's a wonderful Presbyterian report that's come out that I'm trying to publicize. Same logo as my organization, Healing Before Punishment. And they point out that we're using the wrong weapons to fight the wrong thing. And that is exactly the wrong weapon. Locking people up for minor offenses simply destroys lives. There's a wonderful phrase that says, poverty is violence in slow motion. Well, putting people in jail or even just arresting them is violence in slow motion. That's what the drug warriors forget. In the name of trying to do something that I'm sure many of them believe in, they're doing a whole bunch of things that I don't even understand.
Okay, so if you have one final thought to leave all our viewers with regarding Prop 205, what would that be?
That I go back to the justice argument, because I think that's what people of faith can understand most clearly and are most easily easily able to respond to and eager to respond to.
All right, well, Reverend Alexander Sharp, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
joining us here on News Now. You guys can watch this clip in full on our YouTube channel. We will clip it so you guys can rewatch it a little bit later on.